Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. I am pleased to reconvene Alberta's second session of the 31st Legislature. About 9 months ago, I was sworn as the Minister of Jobs, Economy, Trade and Immigration here in Alberta. And since that time, I have come to know even better than I did before that Alberta is a place of opportunity, and we are a leader across Canada, a place people want to come to. Before I get into other government business for the sitting, it is important to highlight a few things. Alberta is the best place to live, to play, to work, to visit, to raise a family. The NDP hates that fact, but it is true. We have the highest average earnings of any province, more affordable homes, and lower taxes. Last month, Alberta secured nearly 42,000 full-time jobs, while during that same time, other jurisdictions across Canada were losing jobs. Year over year, Alberta leads in employment growth, 3.4% compared to 0.6% nationally. This means we're growing employment faster than anyone else, nearly 6 times the national average. I should add, Alberta is projected to lead the country in economic growth again through 26 and 27, just like we did in 2025. On affordability, Alberta is home to 6 of the top 10 most affordable small and mid-sized rental markets in Canada. We cut taxes, while at the same time the NDP, to the west of us, continues to increase taxes as we speak. For healthcare, yesterday our government announced the biggest ever investment for doctors, $7.7 billion for physician compensation and development, a 22% increase from last year. We have massively built out our addiction treatment system, an area completely ignored by the NDP, aside from working with then Mayor Nenshi to decimate Calgary's Beltline with their drug consumption sites. We announced funding for a 32% capacity increase at the Alberta Children's Hospital inpatient tower, completed renovations and added 97 beds at the Peter Lougheed Centre, and are moving ahead with the Red Deer Regional Hospital redevelopment, adding 200 new beds, 6 operating rooms, and so much more. On education, we are witnessing the fastest, largest build-out of schools in Alberta's history. A record-breaking $8.6 billion is building and modernizing 130 schools across the province in response to rapid population growth. Addressing classroom complexities, Premier Smith and Minister Nicolaides recently announced $143 million to deploy 476 complexity teams in K-6 classrooms across the province. About 3 weeks ago, Dow Chemical announced it would be moving ahead with its $11 billion investment to the industrial heartland. Our aerospace sector is growing with companies like Lufthansa, CAE, and de Havilland. Lufthansa Technica, I should correct myself. AI data centers, companies like Synapse are choosing Alberta as they build the biggest data center in Canada to the tune of $10 billion. Now, the reason I go through this is because yesterday, Naheed Nenshi went off on a long-winded, hollow rant. In place of any plan, he resorted to baseless criticism and fear-mongering. It's par for the course. When asked how he would balance the budget, he didn't have an answer and just said he'd figure it out. Sounds to me like he's been spending a lot of time with his friend and ally Justin Trudeau in Ottawa, a person who believes that budgets balance themselves. We see this time and time again from Naheed Nenshi. A lot of talk, but no plan. Now, heading into this session, that's what Albertans want to see from us, is a plan. They love to see one from the opposition, but unlikely. Fear-mongering and insults and baseless accusations is all you're going to get. From us, you're going to see us focus on strengthening the economy and protecting Albertans. As Minister of Jobs, Economy, Trade and Immigration, I plan to introduce 2 pieces of legislation. One will be legislation to advance inter-provincial trade by adopting the Mutual Recognition Agreement on the sale of goods. This means an easier path for businesses to buy and sell products across provincial and territorial lines. The second piece of legislation I plan to introduce will give greater control to the province over immigration and protect newcomers from bad actors in the immigration system. As a constitutionally shared responsibility, it has become clear the federal government has lost control over immigration. If passed, this legislation would license international recruiters and increase oversight for employers who participate in the recruitment and hiring of foreign workers. Our government also plans to introduce legislation that creates a structure for streamlined approval of major projects. Thanks to the hard work and leadership and advocacy of our Premier, the federal government has removed several of their bad policies and laws. Again, I repeat, thanks to the work of our Premier. As a result, we can expect to see investments start to come back to Canada, much of which will land right here in Alberta. By creating a projects delivery office and establishing requirements for 120-day approval, we are letting major investors know that Alberta is open for business. What I have heard in my role is that there are two main ways to drive away investment. The first way to drive away investment is to elect an NDP government. The second way to drive away investment is to bog down businesses in massive amounts of red tape and regulatory burdens, which is exactly what happened when Alberta did the former by electing an NDP government. Next, we'll increase consumer protection by putting in place regulation for destination marketing fees. Alberta is a top-tier destination with a growing tourism sector. In fact, $15.2 billion last year was spent in Alberta in the visitor economy. Alberta broke provincial records again for visitor spending and grew that number nearly 4 times faster than the national average. Destination marketing fees are a voluntary amount collected and meant to be used to drive up tourism in a designated region. Legislation, if passed, will increase transparency and consumer confidence by ensuring destination marketing fees remain voluntary for businesses' participation, kept transparent, fair, and used for their intended purposes of building the visitor economy in those given regions. We are also protecting Albertans and our communities with continued implementation of the Alberta Sheriff's Police Service. The implementation of the ASPS creates more policing solutions and options for municipalities in Alberta and gives Albertans the confidence they need that when an emergency is happening, an officer will be there to help. We will protect vulnerable Albertans by regulating any medical assistance in dying performed in Alberta. The federal government has rapidly expanded medical assistance in dying and even plans to make it available to those with mental health challenges as their sole underlying condition. After opposition from Alberta and every other province, this was paused until next year. Our government is taking steps to protect vulnerable Albertans by prohibiting medical assistance in dying in Alberta for select groups, including minors, including mature minors, individuals with a mental illness or disorder as their sole underlying condition, individuals making advance requests, and adults without healthcare decision-making capacity. Other changes will increase oversight and regulate healthcare workers involved in referring, assessing, or performing medical assistance in dying. And we have a red tape reduction bill that amends 11 pieces of legislation from 7 different ministries. This builds on more than 220,000 unnecessary requirements and regulatory burdens our government has slashed, saving Albertans and businesses more than $3 billion since 2019. That's $3 billion reinvested in businesses, paying employees, and growing the economy. The fact is, Albertans are looking for competency in their government. They're looking for a government offering solutions to the challenges we face today and the headwinds they're walking into tomorrow. They're looking for a government that leads and still exercises responsibility and delivers even in the hard times. Our government is diversifying the economy, creating jobs, and building schools and investing in healthcare, and that's what the legislation this session is intended to do. And I'm now happy to take questions.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. We'll start with questions here in the room. If you can state your name and outlet, we'll start with one question and one follow-up, and we'll go to Lisa first.
Thank you, Hunter. Lisa Johnson with the Canadian Press. Minister, I wanted to ask you about some of the changes that are on the order paper that are going to change a lot of standing orders. And I'm hoping you can explain some of them. So some of them touch on written questions and returns, motions for return. And based on my reading of them, they changed the timeline for when the government needs to respond to those questions from 30 days to 100 days, or 120 sitting days, which could push the responses to a lot of Mr. Guthrie's questions in particular well beyond this sitting, maybe years down the road. Can you explain why that change is being made?
Sure. So first off, we're going to look at written questions and answer them in written format. That's a way that we can make sure the legislature is occupied for debate time. With regards to the timelines of answering those questions, we also don't think that it's necessarily prudent that one member gets to occupy an entire day of private members' business. There is a lot of other private members' business motions that need to be dealt with. And so these motions are made to streamline debate within the chamber, while also not prohibiting, but expanding opportunities for all members to engage, private members to engage, particularly on Mondays. So the timelines being changed as well. It gives the government opportunity to respond in an appropriate timeline, an appropriate manner. So I think that these changes will be for the overall benefit of the legislature.
On that as well, it limits written questions to 3 on the order paper. Mr. Guthrie has 10 written questions and 8 motions for return. The way that I read it, those would not be deleted from the order paper based on that 3 limit. But why limit it to only 3 for one member? Why are you you're kicking the can down the road for responses and you're limiting how many questions members can ask? Why are you doing this?
So the timeline thing I think I already answered. And with regards to the number of questions, it's the same answer as before. I don't think that one single member should be able to dominate the entire private member's day. But you are correct. The way that this motion is written is to not erase the members not erase the what's on the order paper currently, but going forward, changing the way that we approach as part of written questions, motions for return.
Don't Albertans deserve a timely response to those questions, though? They've elected Mr. Guthrie to ask these questions in the legislature. Don't Albertans deserve a timely response?
I think they're getting it.
Okay, we'll go to Emmanuel here.
Yeah, Emmanuel Prestovet, Radio Canada. Question about the Forever Canadian petition that has been tabled to the ledge. Do you want a vote from MLAs to happen on a motion or a bill coming from this petition to happen this sitting or not? Because you have the power to make it this sitting, or if you play out the clock, it's going to happen in the fall.
Sorry, can you repeat the last part?
Yeah, so basically there's like a 90-day waiting period where the committee can formulate its own recommendations on the petition and if it should go to a vote for MLAs. It can be quicker though, and that could mean a vote this sitting, but if you wait the whole 90 days or past the end of the sitting, that means a vote, I guess, when you sit next, which would be in the fall, which would be after a potential referendum.
So at the moment, what I will say is there is a plan to establish a bipartisan committee to look at the issue and determine the best path forward. Anything beyond that would probably be a bit early for me to comment on it, but more to come.
Do you have a follow-up?
Will there be a vote this sitting? Will there be a vote from, will Albertans know if their MLAs are for or against separation before a potential referendum in the fall? Will there be a vote in the ledge?
I think I asked the question just now, like we're going to establish a bipartisan committee and look at the issue. It'll be a committee of the Legislative Assembly, so we'll have full resources available to it, give members the opportunity to talk about this Forever Canada petition, and then chart a path forward.
Okay, we'll go to Catherine here.
Yeah, Catherine Grachowski, All Alberta. So since you brought up the budget, your government had brought in legislative requirements that mandate a government pays back a deficit within 2 years. Can we expect any legislative amendments to that? Are you expecting this budget will show that path to pay off the deficit by next year, or what can we expect there?
Catherine, come on now. You know I can't talk about the budget.
But you can talk about bills.
I can certainly talk about bills, but you know I can't even talk about deeply the content of the bills. So what I would say is on Thursday of this week, you will get to hear the budget. You'll hear more from the finance minister, but it wouldn't be prudent for me to go and talk much more about the budget without the finance minister present. So I'll leave it at that.
Do you have a follow-up?
But I do appreciate the question.
Oh, I have so many follow-ups. But
We'll start with one.
I'll start one. Can you give me a range of how many bills we are expecting to see this sitting, including whether there are any associated with the budget in order for the budget to be implemented?
I see what you did there. Well played. I will tell you that the budget, again, is coming out Thursday. Between the implementation bill and other legislation, you'll probably see around 17, 18 bills.
Okay.
That could always change, though, and everyone knows that in this room. But that is the plan for now.
Okay, we'll go to the front row here.
Connor Hogg, CTV News. I wanted to ask you about your bill for immigration reform. Specifically, just, how is the content of this bill that you're going to be presenting different from the question that is going to be put to Albertans in October? Is there a need for both?
We believe there is. I think that they would work hand in hand, but this legislation is important now, particularly as we begin to regulate recruiters and immigration consultants, creating a licensing process. This will allow us to ensure that it's a fair, transparent process. It's done above board. And there have been reports in the media, anecdotal stories that I've heard as the minister, as I consult with the public and stakeholders, concerns about people coming to Canada, coming to Alberta under false pretenses. And we want to make sure that if someone's coming to Alberta to work either as a permanent or non-permanent resident, that they're going to be treated well, that they're going to be treated fairly, be compensated fairly. And so the government is using this legislation to have more oversight at the provincial level over immigration and who's hiring and who's hiring workers coming into Alberta.
Do you have a follow-up?
Not a follow-up, but I do have another question. I apologize. It's also about the budget, but hopefully not about the content of the budget.
We'll see what we can do for you.
Adjusted to inflation and population growth, government spending is up from when it was when the NDP were in power. The Premier has indicated that, it's going to be a tough budget. I think it's fair to say. Has the province done enough to curb its operating expenses?
I would say absolutely. As ministers, we've been asked to look at our departments, look at our spending to ensure that we are maximizing the benefits of the money that we do spend, making sure it's benefiting Albertans. That's who we serve. When it comes to what we spend versus what the NDP spends, this is an apples to oranges conversation because between 2015 and 2019, you saw a government that was driving away investment. They did not see anywhere near the population increases that we saw. They actually actively campaigned for Albertans to move to other jurisdictions to work. And then they brought in people coming into Alberta to change shower heads and change light bulbs. That is a dramatically different approach to job creation than we're taking. We're attracting investment. We're creating an environment in Alberta where people who create wealth, who create jobs, want to be. We're cutting regulation. Since 2019, we've saved Albertans $3 billion. And we're using what we have as our advantage, our tax advantage and other advantages to attract that investment. So, yes, because of population increases and horrible mismanagement of immigration from the federal government, we have to make changes to the way we spend money in this province, particularly making sure we have adequate physicians, nurses, healthcare practitioners. We have teachers in schools who can deal with the issues they're facing on a daily basis. That costs money.
We'll go to Jack.
Jack with the Canadian Press. The bill to create a project delivery office, I want you to tell me the whole thing here, but is that office being created specifically because of the pipeline, or are we thinking Alberta specific projects that you guys do control over, like ASO and the electrical grid? I'm just wondering what the office's actual reach will be, if it's working with feds or if it's just Alberta only. I feel like you know what I'm asking there.
I see what you're driving at, Jack, right? Yeah. So the reason we're developing this is to streamline and accelerate the process for approval of major projects. We expect a lot of major projects to come to Alberta because of the investment attraction environment that we've created as a government since 2019. We are establishing what we call the Project Development Office, Project Delivery Office, to develop this approach and identify projects that are in the best interest of Alberta. So those projects may also be in the best interest of Canada. They could be projects that are on a major projects list. But here in Alberta, this is par for the course for us and for the Premier of looking at how we as a province can create a regulatory environment that streamlines investment, attracts investment, and signals to international markets that Alberta is open for business. What I hear is the Jobs, Economy, Trade, Immigration Minister, and I don't think this is any secret, but capital follows the path of least resistance. And we think that Alberta has the path of least resistance, and we're going to continue to actively engage those investors. But this major projects office, or rather this PDO or project delivery office we're creating, is one more step in that direction to signal Alberta's intention of attracting new investment.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah. Minister, have you signed a petition looking to force a vote on Alberta separating?
Good question. What I have supported from the beginning, since 2019, was the establishment of a citizens-initiated referendum. And I fought hard with that, with Jason Kenney and now with Premier Smith, who lowered the threshold to make sure that Albertans have their say with this petition. I have not signed the petition myself, but I feel very strongly that Albertans have the right to have a say. Direct democracy is something the NDP has a real problem with. They seem that I think it's a problem for them every time they put a vote to Albertans because Albertans don't agree with what they have to say. So they'd rather not. But I will defend all day the right for Albertans to have this citizen-initiated referendum process so they can feel heard, because our job as legislators is to serve the people. This is what they've asked for, and I respect that 100%. What I also respect is the Premier going toe-to-toe with any Prime Minister to make sure Alberta's best interests are defended. And she has done that, and as a result, we've seen significant reduction on regulatory burdens, the 9 bad laws, headway on that, and the recent MOU. So Alberta continues to win because of this Premier and her leadership.
Okay, we'll go to Cindy here.
Hi, Minister. Cindy Tran with the Edmonton Journal. So there's a lot of noise happening outside the legislature. There's the separation petition going on. There's also ongoing criticism of your government's handling of the healthcare system. So are you concerned that this will overshadow what is happening here in the legislature and what your government is trying to do this sitting?
Well, there's always noise outside the legislature, be it good or bad, and that's for others people to determine whether it's good or bad. We are focused entirely on legislation that will improve investment attraction, that will improve access to health care for Albertans, that will support our education system, build infrastructure. You've seen that since 2019 when we were elected. You see it now with this Premier. But in terms of being distracted, I don't think it's a distraction listening to the voices of Albertans. The Premier has done this for years now, gone on the road, traveled thousands and thousands of kilometers going from every corner of this province on a listening tour. We had the Alberta Next panel to go and listen to what Albertans are doing. So I wouldn't call that noise, I would call that feedback. And whether we agree with Albertans or not on certain issues, it's important for us to listen, and the Premier has done a very good job of that. And the legislation that we're putting forward today, or rather this session, is reflective of what we've heard.
For my follow-up, I wanted to ask about some things on the order paper. It's a move to morning sittings. Just wondering why you've made that decision. I understand that it hasn't been done in quite some time.
I wouldn't say it's morning sittings so much as a change to the start time on Thursdays. Currently, we sit on Thursdays as we usually do. We begin in the afternoon and finish at 4:30. We only have an hour and a half of debate on that Thursday. The new standing order change will actually grant us another hour and a half, so it'll be what I would consider a full afternoon sitting day. Other standing order changes also allow us for more debate. As you would notice, we've spent a lot of time in this legislature waiting to vote. And what I think the standing orders do is allow us to streamline the voting process without prohibiting members access to the time that they can get to the chamber. But it also translates that time in debate. And I've heard this from the press gallery, I've heard this from the opposition talking about debate time. So we're addressing that with what I think is a streamlined set of standing orders.
I know you're limited on what you can say, but I'm just wondering, when it comes to this budget being difficult, are there primary focuses that you really have to hunker down on this time around compared to previous years? Like, is this a tougher thing to look at?
Budgets are always tough, especially when you have depressed oil prices. But it doesn't mean that we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. So yes, we have to make sure that we're addressing issues in education, healthcare, building infrastructure, and really building out this province. And I think this budget balances that. While the Minister of Finance has signaled that we are in a deficit position, we are still able to provide the services Alberta needs, meeting the challenges of a rapidly growing population, jobs and skills training, while also attracting new investment. And so for us, we've done well in the past, relying heavily on the oil and gas sector, and that is our legacy, and I'm so proud of that legacy. Albertans are. We're going to build on that legacy by attracting new investment, and that's how we're going to work to generate new revenue as well.
Sorry, before you ask,
Sorry.
just name and outlet.
Sarah Comodino with Global News.
Sarah, sorry?
Sarah, yeah. So with these challenges this time around, how does this budget compare to previous years, or is it just added on to other difficult years?
That's probably a good question for the finance minister in terms of, but I would say that, again, every budget is tough. You have to weigh the decisions and what the most pressing needs are. We have a lot of very pressing needs in this province, and we're going to continue to respect taxpayer dollars because it is their money. There's only one taxpayer, while also delivering on the services that Albertans pay for. Like, there's a contract between Albertans and the government, and that is they pay their taxes, and with that money we use it responsibly. And we want to make sure that they get the world-class access to services that they pay for, that they deserve. And this budget does that.
Okay. We're going to jump to the phone lines here before we do a second round.
You going for seconds there, Lisa?
We'll jump to the phone
Just got to
lines.
shoot.
Operator, if you can go through our first caller.
The first caller is from Carrie Tate from the Globe and Mail. Your line is now open.
Thanks for taking my question. It's the referendum and the immigration policies. You spoke about that here, and the Premier has said that if there's support for the referendum questions, that she would pursue implementation. What would happen if there's support for the majority support for both separation and the proposed immigration reforms, which assume Alberta would stay in the country?
Sorry, this is Carrie Tate.
Yep.
Oh, lovely to hear from you, Carrie. As usual, asking a hypothetical question. I wouldn't be able to answer that. What I would say is that we'll take the responses to the referendum as they come, and we'll react appropriately. But between now and then, fully respect the rights of Albertans to have a citizen-initiated referendum question that they are canvassing on. And I think that that is direct democracy at its finest. And so I think that this is the right approach for us as a government to take, allowing Albertans to have their say.
So I just want to make sure I understand that the Premier has said that she would pursue implementation of the 9 questions. Are you saying yes to the 9, but the referendum is a hypothetical and you can't say what you would do there?
I feel like I don't follow your question, Carrie. You might have to clarify a little better. What are you really asking here?
Well, the Premier had said that if there's majority support for the referendum is non-binding, but she would pursue implementation by taking direction from citizens. And I'm wondering if that also applies to the question on separation, considering that those things could end up, you could end up voting to separate, but people could also end up voting to support immigration reforms that require staying in the country. How can we do both?
Well, you're asking a question about something that hasn't been determined yet. Again, hypothetical, asking, well, what happens if the signature threshold is met? We don't know if the signature threshold is met. Albertans are out there looking at canvassing on this specific issue. We'll wait and see what happens. And until then, I think it's a bit premature to ask that question, Carrie, but thanks for it.
All right, we'll jump to our next caller.
The next one is from Will Visser from Western Standard. Your line is now open.
If you've already kind of talked about these, but I know last session there was talks about amendments being made to the Recall Act. Could we anticipate seeing any this session?
Not at this time.
Do you have a follow-up, Will?
Yeah, and then my other question is, are there any plans right now or discussions about potentially invoking the notwithstanding clause on any bills this session?
No.
All right. We got time for one more question in the room, and then we'll call it a day.
Lisa had her hand up first.
I know. I saw Lisa way before. All right, Lisa, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just wondering, will the government be taking questions from the member from Edmonton Gold Bar this sitting? Is the previous policy not taking questions from him in place?
You said it was a fun one, Lisa. I am going to hold off on answering that question for now. I was and am still disgusted by the suggestion that the Minister of Education was somehow complicit or responsible for allowing a child predator to go free or be involved with children. And the member from Edmonton Gold Bar, Marlon Schmidt, should be absolutely ashamed of the way that he posed that question. He has framed this as though he has a right to ask that question. And he is right. He has a right to ask a question to the government on government policy. But to imply that a minister is responsible or somehow involved with something as heinous as abuse of children is abhorrent. And I have not made that decision with my caucus about whether or not we'll take questions from Marlon Schmidt. But what I am still waiting for is either a public or private apology from that member for the way he has treated a colleague.
Perfect. We will end on that note. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.